will this end? It's incredible how our parties, the Democrats, the Republicans, the conservatives, liberals, doesn't make a difference. When will governments finally clamp down and stop the hate and stop the violence and stop the attacks on the Jewish community? Will it finally ever happen in 2024? Or will we have to go through something much more dramatic? Hi, everybody. I'm David Solomon. I'm flying solo again today. Stuart is out on assignment. This is the Rant Network. If this is your first time here, this is the podcast that we do every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, noon Eastern, where we bring you unfiltered, uncensored conversations on a wide variety of topics. This podcast is dedicated to giving you the platform to express your opinions, share your thoughts, experiences, ideas, and hear from a variety of perspectives and frank and honest opinions. We dive into the latest news, pop culture, politics, and so much more. We've been ranting for the longest time, over 3 years, about the absurdity of modern life to discussions about the deeper issues affecting our society. And this is definitely one of them. So sit back as we dive into yet another one of those editions of the Rant Network. Well, folks, I don't know if you've been really paying attention in not just in the Western world, but in a lot of places where the violence just doesn't stop. The stupidity doesn't stop. The so-called protests, and I call them so-called because there's a question even that. What are they? So let me give you a couple of things that have been going on, and it's just unbelievable. You have Jewish women attacked in Brooklyn. That's right, attacked in Brooklyn because they're Jewish. Plain and simple, nothing more, nothing less. You have a synagogue in Los Angeles where worshipers were unable to go and attend services. They were blocked by so-called anti-Israel agitators. And if that was not enough, once again, other institutions, not just in the US, but in Canada, being blocked by these agitators. I'm not even sure what to call them anymore. They've been blocking access to community centers, Jewish schools. If you see rallies put together by Jews, they're, I won't call them attacked, but these agitators show up to cause havoc. And last week in Montreal, there's been a list that's been floating around on the line. I mean, of restaurants owned by Jews, and their list was boycott them. And as part of the boycott, one was shot at. Overnight, they found bullet holes. Now, mayors have been handing lip service, police lip service. We will protect you. Don't worry, we'll protect you. This is protection? This is the protection you're talking about? Another encampment opened up in Montreal, in another location in Montreal. So not only do you have it on the universities, but now there's on public property. Victoria Square in Montreal, for those of you who don't know, now has an encampment right in front of a UN institution. How appropriate. The city of Montreal is in outrage. Not just the Jewish community, others. How the mayor of Montreal has refused to do anything. She's talked. By the way, she went to that restaurant that was shot at. I hope she choked on the falafel she ate. But she's been talking about, oh, how we need to clean things and this, but then they should negotiate on McGill. And what are you talking about? Negotiate with whom? This is no longer something that's so-called grassroots. This is not, and I repeat, this cannot be a simple bunch of students protesting. It's just too sophisticated, too organized, too coordinated, too well executed for this to be simply a bunch of kids getting together, a bunch of Palestinian protesters getting together. There is a synergistic movement here. There are people involved that are orchestrating all this. And the sad part is there's not hardly a single level of government that wants to get involved. Liberal and democratic cities such as Montreal, Toronto, Los Angeles, and other cities are standing by, watching as these things unfold with no avail, no change in policy, no change from the mayor's office to affect any change. The opposite. Statements like Mayor Valerie Plante from Montreal saying, "We are not like the United States and we will not become a police state. We refuse to do so," just emboldens that group. But yet she doesn't care. Her mindset is very simple. This is my political base. I'm not going to impact them. So therefore, I'm not going to ask them to change. But on a global scale, people look now at Montreal as a dump. And the Jewish community, let alone other minorities, which includes the Iranian community, which includes the Japanese community, which includes the Filipino community, and others, are going, if it can happen to the Jews, we're next. We got to stop that because they won't stop. And the politicians continue to believe that no, 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 it will work itself out. It, like everything else, it'll fizzle. How is it that the war started on October the 7th, and the first attack, the first, not first attack, sorry, the first protests began in unison on October 8th? Nobody paid attention. They just said, just the same old rhetoric again and again. No, folks, that was the start point. That's when we should have woken up and said, something's coordinated here. Follow the money trail. Wonder where's the money coming from for all this coordination? Because this has been a scale up that doesn't seem to want to give up. Now, this is not just in North America, this is also in Europe and Australia and other places. And it's gone crazy. And there are copycats who try to be part of it and whatever. But again, and we ranted about this, the summer camp that they tried at McGill University, these so called Palestinian protesters, right? This is not grassroots. There is someone behind this. And while the money trail somehow leads back to the rich in Iran, Qatar, and what have you, the governments are doing nothing to stop it. Cut the snake at the head, get rid of the money, watch all this disappear. You don't want violence, do something else. But they're not. There is no political will at the federal level, not in Canada and the United States, not in Europe, at least Western Europe. Instead, we're going to shift the focus. And every time a political message is delivered by a Joe Biden, a Justin Trudeau, a Macron, a Sunni, the Prime Minister of England, which I probably botched his name, and others, you're just adding more fuel to that fire. You're adding more fuel. You're creating more of that momentum, and more of that money is being funneled in, and more of that attitude, that explosive attitude, that protest, the taking over. These encampments, folks, are not protests. It's an invasion. Attacking people trying to go to their house of worship is not just a random act of anti Semitism, it's an invasion. And they've invaded our homes, they've invaded our land, they've invaded our country, and their only goal is to create as much havoc as possible so that you and I cannot live in peace and quiet. Instead, what they have done is they've created an environment that's promoted hate and the introduction of their way of life. Christians cannot go pray in the Middle East except for in Israel. Go to many of these countries like Egypt, and Lebanon, Saudi Arabia, and other countries. Christians cannot practice. In fact, there's been a Christian genocide, which I've talked about. They've eliminated Christians in many, many, many parts of the Middle East. They've either been killed or sent out. Same thing in Africa. Where you have Christian missionaries, they're being killed by these Muslim warlords. The world has been very quiet in this area because they know that every time they open their mouth, more get killed. So we're not protecting the Christians either. We're not protecting the only religion that matters, Islam. Jews, there are hardly any Jews left in the Middle East. They've all been thrown out. And yet the West doesn't want to make a move. It's a frightening time to be alive in the West today. Jews are afraid in many places to walk. They've taken off mezuzahs, they've taken off kippahs. Any symbol of Judaism they've taken off because they are afraid. Because in certain cities where the mayors or the politicians whether it's the state or the provincial level, not so much the provincial, nobody in Canada has really done much to help the Jewish community in the provincial level, let alone the federal level. In the US, there have been some states where they've gone in, there have been some mayors that have been much more vigilant. But in general, the Jew is being vilified. A tiny percentage of the population is being marginalized. We fought for black rights, gay rights, transgender rights, women's rights. But Jewish rights don't seem to matter. It doesn't move the pawn. We get that. We've heard that enough times. You Jews will take care of yourself. You're fine. You don't need our help. And yet we do. Yet we do. Because to say the Jews should take, control and fight for themselves and arm everybody, do we really need to start arming people to allow them to go to a synagogue? Is that the next step that the Los Angeles mayor wants to take? Do women in Brooklyn need to walk around carrying maces and guns to keep people away? Because that's what it seems to be. And if that's the society you want to live in, I don't. This isn't a Jewish thing. This is a human thing. We live in a democracy. We live in peace. We have rights, and we're being denied. And not the mayor's office, not the police. No one's coming to help. So what do you want us to do? What would you do? What would you do if your family was in danger? What would you do if you thought that your child might be attacked because they were, I don't know, Italian, Chinese? What would you do if you knew you couldn't go to your house of worship or send your kid to their local school? What would you do? What would you do if you tried to bring your kid on the weekend to a community center, your community center, and being denied entrance? What would you do if you went to some sort of talk and you weren't allowed out of the building because the protesters who hate you won't let you get out of the building? Yes, there are political movements. Yes, there are people who want to oppose this. Yes, there are going to be change, but it's months away. U.S. election is in 4.5 months. Canadian election is in over a year. It's too long. We need change now. We need change today. We need governments to act now and people to react strongly. This isn't an Israel Hamas thing. This is your life as a citizen in your country about to disappear. So if you want to live in an anarchist society, you want to live in fear, do nothing. But if you're on the side of humanity, wake up, make noise. You need to yell at your mayor. You need to yell at your city councilors and at everybody. We want to go back to what we used to have, not where this is heading. Thanks for tuning in for another rant. Hope you'll share this with your friends through social media. We have our website, therantnetwork.com, where we have all of our podcasts, let alone YouTube. We're here every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, noon Eastern. We broadcast unedited and unfiltered. You get one recording, one version. No one's editing, no one's cleaning it up. So share your feedback, your comments, and what have you. And until Wednesday, folks, stay safe, but don't be quiet. It's time.